always known BenQ to be a budget option that are generally found in office spaces, and I guarantee that if you do walk through your office you will see a BenQ monitor on display somewhere. But we're now at a time in technological history where the cheaper end of the market are pumping out superior products, and really products that can keep up with the specifications of the more expensive items. Now in this case I'm talking about the BenQ EL2870U. First off I want to talk about the price, and which we went onto Amazon, which is our go-to online store for everything ever. I can find the monitor on there for around £300, which is far cheaper than other comparable models. Looking at the 4K and HDR models, the comparable ones to this, you're looking at between £400 and £600 average, which is quite a large increase on the £300 asking price for this. However, there are a number of caveats with the BenQ monitor that do make the more expensive options more viable to go for, especially gaming, as the BenQ monitor just really isn't built for that. So the aim of the game here is video enjoyment, and that's exactly what it says as marketing gumph, as I call it, on the side of the box. Now, it does come with AMD FreeSync, so if you do want to play games, you can use AMD's FreeSync technology. I do apologise, NVIDIA, there isn't a model out there for you yet. But because of its meager 60Hz refresh rate, it isn't a wonderful experience, especially if you're playing fast-moving titles like Overwatch or Counter-Strike Global Offensive. If you're playing them competitively, that is, I do know you will need actually a much faster monitor to handle those handle the speeds of those types of games. But for casual gamers, then the AMD FreeSync does kick in, and it does do an okay job. So the design of the BenQ EL2870 is rather basic, and it does look as if it's something that would have come out maybe 5-6 years ago, compared to something like the Infinity Edge displays on the Dells, or even the ultra-wide kind of very fancy looking LG monitors out there that we've taken a look at over sort of the past couple of months. Now the actual bezels themselves on the sides and the top, you're looking at 2 centimeters thick, while on the bottom you're looking at 3 centimeters. It does go back, I would say roughly, I haven't measured this, but about 5-6 centimeters in depth. That's not including the base. Now the actual base does look like a T, which I think actually looks quite nice. It's very, very minimalistic, especially on the desk. It takes up very little real estate as well for such a big screen, which I absolutely love. The actual controls are housed on the underside. There are five buttons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buttons including power on the underside of the actual monitor, which you can have access to some quick menus, or you can dive deeper into the actual user interface on there, giving you access to things like picture controls, sound controls, turning on HDR on and off as well. Now on the back you will find 2 HDMI ports and 1 display port, and that is absolutely it. There is a headphone jack for sound. If you do want to run a headphone pass-through, the audio will carry from your computer to the monitor. You can use the speakers in here, but no one should ever use monitor speakers because they sound absolutely terrible and very flat, just horrible. Do not use them. Use a pair of headphones and plug them in. You've also got a VESA mount on the back as well, so if you do want to wall mount this monitor, then you can get it off of your desk, take off the actual base stand itself, get it on the wall, and it'll look quite nice. Now, there is a tilt on the actual monitor that you can take advantage of, which goes 15 degrees back, but only 5 forward, so that's sort of 20 degrees in total. So performance-wise, as I said above, for gaming, this really isn't a gaming monitor, and yes, although it does sport the AMD FreeSync technology for those variable AMD refresh rates, comparing this to, say, something like an IPS panel, it really isn't a good choice for gaming. The overall 60Hz refresh rate, as well as it being a TN panel, doesn't really make it ideal for that kind of smooth gaming that you would have got maybe with an IPS panel, something like that. So it does have a 1 millisecond response time, which is fairly decent for a monitor of this price. But where it does suffer is the HDR quality and the colours produced by that. So the BenQ 2870 monitor has a maximum brightness of 300 nits, which is an absolute far cry and very much under par to the 400 to 600 nits that you really need to pull off effective HDR content. Also, the monitor is edge-lit, which means that there is a backlight, LED backlights down each edge. There's none across the top, but there is no local dimming either. So again, your HDR content will suffer for that. Now, it also does feel like a way that BenQ is keeping down manufacturing costs, basically for us, so they can pump out this monitor a lot cheaper than the competition. But do be warned that the HDR here isn't as good as HDR on other monitors that we've seen. Like there was a Dell, I'll leave a link in the description, a Dell a little while ago that had very, very nice HDR on there. And I think that comes down to being a TN panel again, so the colours suffer, but it also doesn't have local dimming either. So I did check out some online content, and I did do a side-by-side comparison with Marco Polo, which is on Netflix at the moment. It's one of the only, I think there are about 15-20 shows that are being shown in HDR on Netflix in the UK, Marco Polo being one of them. And I actually found out something really strange. Google Chrome does not support HDR, apparently, according to Netflix anyway. I looked at the Netflix FAQ and they said that I can either use an app on Windows, as in the Netflix app from the Microsoft Store, or I can use Microsoft Edge browser to give me HDR content. I didn't know that in the past, which I don't know if anyone else knew that in the past, but you do now if you watch this video. But I did a side-by-side comparison between the Microsoft Edge browser and the Google Chrome browser. And yes, although because I was using them in half windows, the picture quality wasn't that much better in the Microsoft Edge browser. I was expecting it to be a lot more clear with a lot more detail within the shadows, but there just wasn't. Yet there was a slight difference, I must admit, especially in the daylight scenes of Marco Polo. There was a very, very slight difference in sharpness. And sort of clarity within the darker colours on the screen, but there was not enough for me to say, yes, that is good HDR, unfortunately. I'd never ever used the emulated HDR on anything because I found when I used that, colours were a little bit dull, and I found that I could get a much better picture quality if I used just the standard picture mode on here, and I just made a few tweaks to the contrast and the brightness a little bit. I found that I could get a far superior picture doing it that way than having to actually go into an emulated HDR setup. But you do have to remember that this monitor is only £300 compared to the £400, £600 HDR monitors out there at the moment, so you're getting what you pay for. If you want better HDR, it looks at the moment as if you're going to have to pay for it, so bear that in mind when you do decide to make that purchase decision. Now, I think another factor affecting, sounds a bit like a tongue twister to say that 10 times, but I think another factor affecting the HDR quality is the fact that they're using a TN panel and not an IPS panel. Now, IPS are generally known for having a much, much larger contrast ratio and a much higher sort of color gamut. It can produce a lot nicer colors compared to a TN monitor. Now, the TN monitor do have usually very, very nice response times, especially for when you're consuming media, but the colours fall down. So again, I think the HDR suffers because of that as well. Now, the viewing angles on this monitor aren't very good at all, and that's again because it's a TN panel, but if you have got this monitor directly in front of you on a desk, which most of the time I am using, there might be a couple of times where I'm sort of relaxing back, playing some Rocket League, for example, which again looks quite good on this monitor. Certainly I didn't find a huge number of issues with it, but I just generally felt that the viewing angles weren't very good. But it didn't really affect me in any way because I sit in front of my monitor 90% of the time. So if you're sitting dead on, you're going to be absolutely fine. But I thought I'd let you know, just in case you were going to be sort of lazing on the sofa while using the screen or on your bed. So for me, I'm a very casual gamer. I don't really play anything competitive. I don't play any ranked. I'm very much just a sit back and play kind of gamer. I have been playing through Shadow of the Tomb Raider at the moment. I'm about 4 or 5 hours in, which I feel like I haven't scratched the surface, but that's for another video. I can't really complain about the actual picture quality that the monitor does give you. So on the bottom of the actual monitor is a little sensor, and that can detect the type of light that's coming into the monitor. So it can really make on-the-fly decisions. Your backlight, it's called Backlight Intelligence Plus, and it can make on-the-fly decisions on how the picture should be displayed to you. So if it's sort of glaring sunlight through the window, or your top light is hugely bright and it's affecting that, it'll change the brightness of the monitor to really compensate for that. Once it gets dark outside, you've got your lights turned off, it will dim the monitor for you just to protect your eyes. Generally, I didn't have it switched on because if I'm playing a game for a long period of time, then light's going to change all the time, and I didn't then want my picture changing on the fly. So I just turned it off, but it is there if that does interest you and the kind of work you're doing. Especially if you're looking at Word documents all day, it might help because it will protect you from things like eye strain. But if you are gaming on the monitor, then you'll probably want to turn that feature off. So the BenQ EL2870 does have its problems, I mean sure, but it's still a very affordable 4K monitor. If you're a casual gamer, then you can't really go wrong at the £300 price tag. But if you are going to be playing competitive, either professional, at events, or even kind of ranked play on CSGO or Overwatch or something sort of very, very fast moving, fast paced, then this probably isn't going to be the monitor for you. I would look for something with a much higher refresh rate. For media consumption, don't expect too much either. You do get a slight bump in 4K HDR content, but it's not enough, I think, to warrant an upgrade from previous monitors, unless you're looking for it. If you're looking for an entry-level 4K HDR monitor, then absolutely this one for £300 you can't really go wrong. But if you are an enthusiast of media or gaming, then I would look elsewhere. But comparing this model to something like the Dell U2718 that we looked at a little while ago, I'll leave a little card up the top, up there, so you can go and check out that video. Compared to something like that, then yeah, this monitor does not touch it with a barge pole. But you've got to bear in mind as well that the Dell monitor is really over double the price of this. You've got to weigh out what you want. If you want competitive games, then go for a faster refresh rate monitor. If you want a higher quality for media consumption, Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, or home movies kind of thing, then you're looking at an IPS panel for sure. So thank you very much for checking out our video review of the BenQ EL2870 HDR 4K monitor, I can call it that, video experience, they call it. If you enjoyed this video, then do click that like button. Do subscribe to keep up with all of our latest tech and gaming videos, and also let us know in the description what you think about this monitor, whether it's something you would go for, or whether you would rather spend double the price going for something like the Dell that I put the card in the corner for, or whether you would just go for IPS in general. Let us know in the comments what you think. As I said, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. And I guarantee that if you do walk through your office somewhere, there will be a BenQ monitor on display. It does look pretty good. I can't really complain about how, but... And if you've got the, I can't remember what the mode's called, the BI mode. So if you've got